Hello friends and strangers, this is an update based on my previous video on the experiment me and my brothers were doing, eating only or consuming only oil for 5 days. If you haven't seen the video yet, I'll make the link float around the video or put it in the comments wherever I'm posting this. So a surprising number of you have been emailing me impatiently asking for updates, and so here we go. We're going to break this up into 3 sections. The first is the experience that I and my brothers had during the experiment. The second is addressing a number of questions that you guys either sent me through email or Facebook. And lastly, sort of what we are considering doing differently or behaviors we're considering implementing after this experiment. So, here we go. So section 1. How did we experience, what did we experience during this experiment? I made a bunch of notes, and we've been mostly meticulously tracking our blood values, as I described in the previous video. So just a little recap. Our goal with this experiment was to see how fast and deep we could reach a ketotic state, so to have keto bodies in our blood, by consuming only a very particular medium-chain triglyceride, a C8 oil called caprylic acid. We already know that consuming this oil is a fuel for your body to create ketones. So people who are into, for example, the ketogenic diet, they use this oil as sort of a cheat or a booster to reach it faster. If, by the way, you're looking at this, you have no idea what I'm talking about, go back and watch the previous video, and I will post another link to an article explaining ketosis and fasting and their relationship. So, outcomes. I got a little list here. The first 12 hours were a bit, I wouldn't say disappointing, but after 12 hours we had reached 0.2 millimolars of ketones. Not very surprising. The numbers that we were looking for is to reach 2 and higher, which are generally considered to be therapeutic levels of ketones and deep in ketosis. I was actually having a discussion with a Reddit user online who said that ketosis is a binary state. Either you're in ketosis or you're not, which is a misconception. Little recap from the last video. Either your body runs on a glucose-based metabolism, which means that your body relies mostly on blood sugar for its energy, or you are in ketosis, which is where your body stops relying as much on glucose, on carbohydrates, and focuses more on fatty acids in the form of ketones in your blood. Seeing as this is about blood sugar levels and ketone levels, you can't binarily be either in ketosis or not. Ketosis is defined as a certain level of these ketones, but it's not that your body suddenly flips a switch and there's a ketone marker that either says yes or no in your blood. So it's really about what the level of ketones in your blood is. If you go too high, by the way, in ketones, this is something called ketoacidosis, which is definitely not good for you. Some diabetics have problems with this. There's no problem or reported problems with ketoacidosis in the ketogenic diet. All right, so it's not binary, it's a value spectrum, and we were looking to be above 2. So first 12 hours, not very interesting, 0.2, low. 24 hours, 0.9. We were sort of reaching the 1, which is nice. After 48 hours, we topped the 2.4, at least 2 of us. So the third, the middle brother who lives in Amsterdam, actually he didn't get his measuring device till the last day. So I'm afraid I can't give any data as to how his body responded. But me and my brother here, who were doing more or less the same, we both around the 48-hour mark hit 2.4. 72 hours, so 3 days in, we hit 3. Which is pretty good, pretty high. And it actually stayed around that. We tested 2 to 3 times a day, and it stayed around that mark. And even 96 hours in, we were both hovering around the 3.5 mark. He actually topped the 4 a couple times. But the conclusion of this is the first 2 days we were sort of slowly ramping up, and day 3 and 4 and the day after were heavily in ketosis. So we would say that that's a success. From the perspective of the blood markers we were trying to reach, that went well. Now those are purely the numbers, because the experience that we had purely from a human how do I feel level were varied. So I'm going to cover two elements, the mind, the mental feeling, the emotional, and then purely on a physical level. So the mind actually wasn't a problem for us. Perhaps due to the oil, perhaps due to the fact that we're both intermittent fasters and we're used to not eating on a regular basis. We didn't have any focus issues. In fact, both of us noticed that while we didn't feel particularly motivated, whenever we would sit down and do a task, it was very easy to reach a flow state. So it wasn't like in the movie Limitless, we suddenly felt like we understood everything. But when we started doing something, it came surprisingly easy to focus and to continue doing things. So that was nice. So focus, good. Feeling, mentally, energy level, perfectly fine. No problem. There are no moments where you're down or you have brain fog. Quite the opposite, in fact. So while we didn't actively feel boosted mentally in any way, we definitely didn't feel like we were inhibited in any way. So from the mind onto the body, and that's where it gets a bit interesting. So first, the obvious. How do you feel? Mostly fine. The body feels a bit weaker, which is to be expected. I mean, we were consuming 1,000 calories of oil every day, and only that. So we felt a bit weaker, but not weak, not very shaky all the time. It's not as if, the kettlebell I have lying around, I could pick it up, do a few exercises, that's fine. But you probably know that feeling when you get up in the morning and your body feels a bit weaker than usual. It was sort of a weaker version of that, only the whole time. So it wasn't particularly uncomfortable, but I wouldn't say that I felt pumped to go do a workout. But it didn't get in the way of daily life. I actually went to a 30 Seconds to Mars concert on day 3. So we were already, 72 hours, 3 millimolars in, and yeah, was fine. Bouncing around, etc. There was another issue, but we'll get to that later. So the body, stamina and strength-wise, you can do everything they usually would. Neither of us felt like we couldn't work or couldn't do anything. Then the only problem was, shall we say, gastrointestinal discomfort. So we consumed only oil. Your intestines aren't used to that, and they responded interestingly. So the first few days, everything was fine. You lose a bunch of weight, and we'll cover that a bit later as well. You lose a bunch of weight, which is mostly water. Your body basically empties out your intestines. Basically, your body empties out in a non-spectacular kind of way. However, after a few days, all of us started noticing that our intestines were not responding very happily to eating only oil. So if you think of the gastrointestinal tract, so your intestines, you sort of have your throat, you hit the stomach, and then you have two sections in your intestines, where the first one mostly absorbs the fats. If these fats go beyond that bit, which they're not supposed to, the rest of the intestines might not be very happy with that. So what we noticed was, one, little bit of cramps, discomfort, and once in a while the feeling like you really need to go to the bathroom, which makes no sense because you haven't eaten anything, there's nothing that could possibly come out. But it feels very uncomfortable. So, for example, too much information, I know, but on the way to the 30 Seconds to Mars concert, I suddenly just felt like, oh shit, I need to find a bathroom right now. Which was a bit hell because we were in a train station and, you need to have those physical coins for the stupid public bathroom. Someone solved this issue. Anyway, I basically had a little conversation with the cleaning dude and he just let me in. Went to the bathroom, nothing much, nothing interesting. But it felt decidedly uncomfortable. And in the last couple days, I really noticed that was uncomfortable. And if you're in a public place and you don't have a bathroom available, painful. So that was not very good. In fact, Franz stopped taking the oil on day 3 from top of my head, 3, 4, and only took very small amounts. But yeah, I continued because science, and I don't know, I guess I have some sort of masochistic tendencies when it comes to gathering data about the body. But yeah, that was not particularly fun. So mind fine, strength fine, intestines not particularly happy. All right, next section, questions. So let me start by saying I was quite surprised by the amount of friends that are either experimenting with fasting or with the ketogenic diet right now. So that was kind of cool, which also led to a number of interesting questions. So first, Brit, hello, asked first, what is the goal in this? So my first comment on that is, first off, not weight loss. I know that a lot of the discourse around the ketogenic diet, if you Google it, is basically people trying to lose weight. I don't know how well it works for that. Perhaps it worked great, but that is not our goal. The first was basically giving the body an opportunity to clear out damaged cells. And I talked a bit more expansively about this in the previous video, but in essence, when you starve your body of blood sugar and focus on ketones, there is evidence that a lot of cells that are defective basically self-destruct, which is a process called autophagy. So they eat themselves. It's kind of funny that historically a lot of cultures have this practice of fasting as a cleansing practice. Usually combined with religious things. But science now is starting to support also that this practice of fasting, wind picking up, helps the body clear out a number of damaged components. I was actually listening to a podcast yesterday that was talking about the effects of fasting on depression and how it could help a number of people with that. Not saying that if you're depressed you should fast. Again, everything that we're doing is super experimental, and mostly the data comes from rats, rabbits, and a handful of humans. 2, goal-wise, willpower, testing yourself, see if you can do this. We know that the human body can survive about 3 weeks or more without food, so there's nothing too risky about doing this. But it is a very nice test to see if your mind is up to the task of doing this. It's surprisingly easy. It sounds very intense, and it's not super easy, but it's not particularly hard either. All right, what does it feel like to eat after? First off, once you break your fast, so you have breakfast after 5 days, do not do what you think you want to do, which is eat everything. Start slow. Our current routine, I don't know if this is a coincidence, but all of us gravitated towards berries as a breakfast. So I got raspberries, I think Frank got strawberries, and Mikkel got, I think, also some kind of berry. So berries are a nice thing to start with. Also, your tongue is so desensitized to taste that everything tastes ridiculously flavorful. So a raspberry it's incredibly sweet, incredibly aromatic. It's a nice thing to start with. Have some of them, then wait. Your body needs like a little while to adapt. Over the course of the day, slowly start eating a little bit. There will be times where you feel incredibly energetic. Both me and my brother here, we had a sugar high from raspberries, which was an interesting experience. We were basically bouncing around the room like two little kids who were given some Coca-Cola for the first time. It was nice, we started doing pull-ups and push-ups, and those. It was interesting, especially because of raspberries. So when you start eating, your body will react a little bit funky, but you're not going to be prevented from doing anything that you usually would. Neither of us really crashed. However, we also eat relatively healthy foods, so it might be different if you start with, say, pizza and fries. Don't eat pizza and fries together, ever. All right. Muscles. I think Yin asked this question. Doesn't your body want to eat your muscles for energy? This is what I like to call bro science. It's when you go into a fitness club and ask about protein, basically they will say, you need to constantly eat some protein so that your body doesn't catabolize your muscles into energy. All right, the body is not stupid. Evolution is not stupid. All right, strictly speaking, it's not intelligent either because, it's just a process. But think about it. From an evolutionary perspective, humans living in the wild, who do not eat, your body has two choices, or evolution has two choices. Reward the behavior that if you don't have food, grow weaker by eating your own muscles, which would result in a scenario where if I can't fight food, I go weaker and I have more chance of dying. Or reward genetics that basically say if I do not eat, I will consume my own fats, but I will not touch my muscles because I need these for survival, thereby increasing my chances of survival. Which one do you think evolution favored? Well, that one, obviously. So your body, when you do not give it a lot of food, it's not going to metabolize your muscles. Sure, under some circumstances, yes, certainly. But basically, muscle is the last choice that it takes, especially when in ketosis. When in ketosis, your body's already gotten the signal saying we're not getting any carbohydrates. In our case, we're also getting way too little calories for normal sustenance. So what does the body think it wants to do? Well, clean out damaged things and consume fats, not the muscles. There's a protein sparing effect, as we call it, to ketosis. So you don't have to worry at all that during fasting you're going to lose a lot of muscle mass. You might lose some, but definitely not very much. We actually saw this in the scale measurement, my smart scale measurements. It's a Nokia model Body Plus or something like that. So first off, yes, I'm aware that smart scales are not perfect. They measure body fat, etc., through something called bioelectric impedance. They shoot a little electricity into your body and based on the resistance estimate how much fat, how much muscle, how much water you have. So while not perfect, they do allow you to see a trend in your body's development. And the trends that we very strongly saw is, first off, day 1 and 2, you lose weight. And when I say you lose weight, you lose like 3 kilos. What? Well, 1, water mostly. Your body starts dehydrating a little bit. 2, everything that was in your intestines, gone. I'm not sure how much weight it is, maybe a kilo. So you lose a number of kilos very quickly. The moment you start eating again, you regain all of them within like 24 hours. I noticed that basically my weight was hovering around the 85, 86 kilograms. Day 1, day 2, it went down to 83, 82. And when I started eating, it did shoot up. It did shoot up lower than where I started, which is to be expected. My body's been burning my fat to survive for a couple days. But the difference wasn't all that big. And if I may believe the bioelectric impedance trend, I did not significantly lose muscle mass. Which also visually, it's not very accurate, but visually there was no particular impression of losing muscle. All right. The next questions all focus around the operational element. So how did we do stuff? Mostly questions by Adina. So first, how do we consume the oil? Well, the first one's obvious. Shots. We had a little kitchen scale, shot glasses, and just measured 20 grams of the oil per shot. It's not a particularly gross oil. So the nice thing about good oils is, for example, with olive oil, a good oil will taste nice. So you can just eat it with a spoon. So I do this with olive oil all the time. It's actually very, very tasty. If you have the right one. This oil, if I recall correctly, was produced from palm oil. It tasted slightly coconutty, not with a strong coconut aroma, but light hint. Easy to drink, no gag response on it. So consumption-wise, not too bad. Fran my little brother, did respond to it a bit weirdly because after 5 days of basically having the same taste, you grow a bit sick of it. But I thought it was quite alright. Second, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with something like bulletproof coffee, which is basically having coffee, an MCT oil, and some butter and blend it. First time you hear this, you think, what? But the idea there is, in fact, to boost your brain with the caffeine and the fatty acid that allows your body to create ketones. And this is done outside of fasting. You actually Google this. Just if you Google bulletproof coffee, you'll find it. We did similar stuff. So I really like drinking matcha tea. So what I did in the mornings is basically just grab a blender, put in some matcha, put in the oil, hot water, blend, and you get a bit of a latte cappuccino kind of texture with the matcha. Worked very well. It was a nice caffeine boost in the morning too. I did it with coffee as well, but I realized that I don't really like the flavor of coffee blended with oil. It's alright. It's not my favorite. So in the morning I take the matcha. I don't do it throughout the day because it's just too much caffeine, especially when you're empty with an empty stomach. Wow. I'm sitting outside, I can hear animals move, and that bird just sounded like a monkey. Anyway. And a note on supplements. I take food supplements, mostly potassium, magnesium, vitamin D, and lithium orotate, a low-dose lithium mineral. I'll post all of this in the comments as well. But basically, those supplements bring us to another question, which is sleep. Do you sleep well when fasting? So I've never experienced any issues. I, especially during fasting, supplement with some salt, just sea salt, and the magnesium, potassium, vitamin D. My little brother mentioned that he had done a fast previously where he only consumed water, where he did not sleep well at all. He did say that when he did an experiment later with a fast where he took salt, that basically solved the issue altogether. So our hypothesis is that when you fast, you basically lose a bunch of liquid, you lose a bunch of salt, and your body just goes all wonky on that. For the biologists among you, the electrolyte balance in your blood is just going to go off, which will upset osmosis, osmotic pressure, blood pressure, etc. So take salt, sea salt preferably, not pure table salts with just sodium and chloride. That's a bit too simple. Find some sort of sea salt. We just, either snacked pinches of it or threw it into water, which gave it, like I said, your tongue is very sensitive, so it almost tastes like a broth when you just have water and salt, which is kind of interesting, but nice, for the variety when you're not eating for a couple days. So sleep-wise, the supplements and the salt really help there. As for work, the question, did we take time off work? No. Well, for one, so my little brother works at a company, or did at the time. I just work from home, but both of us were just working, and like I mentioned in the first section, focus was great, mind was great, there's nothing wrong there. So that's not a problem whatsoever. Last question though, workouts. I guess you could. I've heard of people doing fasting and doing runs. Some people even do all sorts of deadlifts and things. You could. Your body's probably capable of it. I'm not sure if I would choose to put my body under that strain under that circumstance. We stuck to mild exercise, walking, maybe some kettlebell swings, a pull-up here and there. I know that the middle brother of the three, he has workouts in the morning quite steadily, and if I understood correctly, he basically just worked out lightly, or lighter than usual. So yes, you can still work out. It's not like you're lying on a couch all week and without energy. But I would personally not recommend going full steam. But if you do, let us know how it goes. Preferably even run it with a structural experiment and measure some of your blood values. So that, and almost missed the last one. When was our last meal? The day before our fast, we just had an early dinner. Where early dinner, this is the Netherlands, so 5-6 o'clock. You could decide to have it earlier to sort of prolong the fast a little bit, but yeah, we didn't find that too necessary. All right, third and last section. What's next? So like I said, the experiment went great. The results were good. The only real physical problem we had was gastrointestinal discomfort, intestines, cramps. So we're considering trying to find some sort of foodstuff, maybe something fiber-like, fiber-rich, maybe even something that is not even absorbed by the body, so that we can consume the oils combined with some sort of fiber, something to keep the intestines busy. But it would have to have no effect on our blood values, particularly on the ketones and blood sugar. We haven't thought very deeply about this, but probably when we do this experiment again in 3 months, I do fasts, like multi-day fasts every 3 months. we'll probably try and figure out a way to make that work in an attempt to make sure that we can do this comfortably without, basically feeling uncomfortable and having to have a bathroom around within a couple minute radius. That and me and my middle brother had considered to do a weekly fast, so 1 day a week where we don't eat. I have opted to go with Fasting Friday, so every Friday I will now fast, and the only thing I have is basically 1 dose of MCT oil. I did it last Friday, and actually I noticed that within 24 hours my body reached 2 millimolars of ketones. Now, if you recall, the numbers that I mentioned previously was that within 24 hours I only reached about 0.9 or 1 millimolar. So I'm not sure what exactly happens there. Maybe after this fast, the body became more adapted to switching to a ketotic state. Possible. I seem to recall something, and I'll have to get back to this. But when I studied, I seem to recall something about an enzyme in the production of ketones that is upregulated when the body needs it. So in other words, the body becomes better at producing ketones as it does it more often. Don't quote me on this, vague memory, I will dive into it. But that might be an explanation for why within 24 hours I reached 2 millimolars. Note this is with one of those matcha with MCT oil blends. So I did give my body ketones as a source. The way I do this is I have a relatively early dinner on the Thursday, ends around 8. Then on the Friday at around breakfast time, which is somewhere between 12 and 4, I tend to push it up a little bit to 12 because I'm having it with the matcha. Have that, which is 20 grams, which top of my head is only like 200 calories, 300 calories, which is basically my consumption for the day. And then on the Saturday, at my usual breakfast time, so after midday, I just have food. Idea being that you sort of have a weekly moment where you can break down those cells that are damaged and give your body an opportunity to reach into ketosis and to go into more of a repairing state. I will probably run a video later about how that goes more chronically. If you have any questions about that or anything else, let me know. Well, I'm not going to hard commit, but most likely this YouTube channel will become a thing. So if you like this kind of videos, click the subscribe button. You can ask questions in the comments below the video. So yeah, that'll be it. Over and out, and speak to you next time. Actually, we're not really having a conversation. We had considered running a podcast kind of thing where me and Fran have a conversation to be filmed. Let me know if that's something you would enjoy. All right? Bye bye.